You know, Oz, people underestimate you, but not me. I've always known you were capable of more.
From a Batman spin-off series that I didn't know I needed, to trying to solve a couple crazy murder cases each and every week, into an insane drama, the year of television took us on some crazy rides. As we look ahead into the new year, it's time to look back on my favorite TV shows of 2024. But before we get into my top 10 favorite shows of 2024, let me know yours in the comments below. What were some of your favorite shows? What were some of your favorite episodes of television? What was your favorite new show, return of a season, favorite character? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Let's kick off my list with my number 10, and that's Amazon Prime's Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, this is how you do a remake, in that you don't repeat what's come before, but instead you try to somewhat reinvent the story and the narrative you've seen in the past. Now, at the foundation of the show, it had similarities to what the film was, but it still was its own thing. We don't have a married couple who's hiding their identity from one another about being spies, but instead we have spies who are very aware of each other's occupation, and they're pretending to be married as a cover for their missions.
You're sitting underneath a shelter I made. I made this fire. I got you this fish.
Shelter, food, fire, water.
I thought the script was very sharp, as well as the dialogue. I love the vibe of the show, but more importantly, the chemistry between Donald and Maya was very good. The comedy worked for me. The action was really grounded and gritty, and this was a show that I just thought got better as it moved along. Like, this was coming from, again, from the mind of Atlanta, one of my favorite shows of all time, with Donald Glover, and also the showrunner was one of the writers of that show. They delivered on the goods. Like, I was such a big fan of how the show just came about. Again, I was like, I knew the behind the scenes with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who walked away from the show. I'm like, is Maya and Donald gonna have chemistry? And they did. I am kind of disappointed that season 2 won't be continuing the season 1 storyline with the characters, or at least that's what they say so far. It might be a cameo or two, since this show is known for cameos, but nonetheless, season 1 of Mr. and Mrs. Smith was a fantastic show, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. You will not be disappointed. Coming in at my number 9 is HBO Max Dune Prophecy. Now, as a fan of the Dune movies, but not having read the books or having much knowledge of the books, I was a little bit nervous getting into the show, maybe not understanding some of the stuff that was going on and following the lore, but that wasn't the case. I really enjoyed this show. It wasn't necessarily like a one-for-one of the film, like as far as, like, obviously you have Hans Zimmer's and Greg Fraser's and Denis Villeneuve's and Timothy, like, you have these A-list talents within the Hollywood movie sphere, but on the small screen, I felt as though that the show was able to give me similar vibes to some of the elements that we see from the films, and getting a deeper understanding of the Harkonnens, who we hate in the movies, right? But you get their perspectives from Tula, as well as Valia Harkonnen, who is the mother superior of the sisterhood, seeing the origins of the sisterhood. Like, I know the book readers, from what I gathered from my comment section, just some of the stuff I saw online, some of the book readers weren't the biggest fan of the show, and, you know, to each their own, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Like, I like how the show, very similar to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I feel like each and episode as we went along got better than the last episode, and we learned a lot more about, again, the origins of the organization of the sisterhood before they become the Bene Gesserit, the origins of the Water of Life and the agony. Like, I really enjoyed the building of the world, the building of the characters, the understanding of who this Desmond character is and how it ties into the thinking machine. So, very good show. Sci-fi fan here. I love the sci-fi elements. I thought there were some character beats that didn't entirely work for me, but it sets up an intriguing season 2, which I'm here for. So if you haven't seen Dune Prophecy, you were kind of on the fence, it's definitely worth checking out. If you're a fan of Dune and you like to learn about the world a little bit more, check it out on HBO Max, and that's why Dune Prophecy for me is number 9 on my list.
I run a school for young women. We're not a threat to anyone.
Moving into my number 8, and that's Netflix's Terminator Zero. The Terminator franchise came out of the gate swinging with one of the best horror science fiction films of all time, in my opinion, but then they followed that up with one of the greatest sequels of all time with Terminator Judgment Day. But unfortunately, in my eyes, the follow-up movies, minus an occasional okay moments here and there, but for the most part, they've been failures. But we fast forward to 2024 on Netflix, and this show, Terminator Zero, did everything that the movies failed at, as far as everything from beyond part 2 of Terminator, where just the stories were convoluted, characters didn't really have much motivations, the stories just weren't that great. This show was the complete opposite of that. Like, the characters were so well written, the development of the story was so good. It does what I love about Terminator, which is exploring the idea of traveling back in time to prevent things from the future going back to the past. And the way this show handles time travel was excellent. I love the anime vibes. I'm not a big like anime fan like I used to be growing up, like watching Dragon Ball Z and whatnot, but I love how the anime influences like of an Akira or a Ghost in the Shell really kind of played into the visceral nature of the show. Like, this is a very gritty and also violent show that I was here for. The show didn't get the most buzz, so I don't know if there's a season 2 in the works based on how season 1 ended, but here's to hoping that we do get a season 2. But if it doesn't, because Netflix is very well known to not bringing shows back after, a first season. They don't allow shows to grow and have legs. But nonetheless, if this is a one and done season, this is an excellent season of television, but also an excellent continuation within the Terminator world. And I hope that if we do get more Terminator movies or shows, follow the template that they gave us and allow these showrunners and these creators to really play into the lore and mythology, and you get something as great as what you get with Terminator Zero. Coming in at my number 7 is HBO's True Detective Night Country. Man, the case of Annie K and the scientists with the detectives Navarro and Liz was one hell of a ride. To me, I thought this was the best season since season 1 of True Detective. And the reason I say that is because I like the way this show was able to take elements of season 1 and bring this into this new series in regards to season 1 had the groundedness, the grittiness. We had the great partnership with Woody and Matthew McConaughey, but the supernatural elements of season 1 was very, very intriguing, and this new season was able to kind of do a similar thing. And I know there were some critiques, well, a lot of critiques online from people thinking that this was just kind of a rip-off of season 1, which I totally disagree with that. But I thought the showrunner Issa Lopez, who wrote the episodes, directed the episodes, did a good job of homaging season 1, having some ties into season 1, but also creating her own lane. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed Navarro and Liz, what's going on with Navarro having these blackouts, what's going on with Liz and her kid and her past, and how it all goes into this current storyline with this missing person Annie, and how it ties to the scientists. What a great week-to-week discussion with this show. Great mystery, great performances. Issa Lopez is writing, I believe, season 5, and she's going to be showrunning that, and I can't wait to see what she has up her sleeve. Because if it's anything like her recent season of True Detective, we're in for a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and again, I can't wait to see what she does with the next season of True Detective. Coming in next on my list is Disney Plus Agatha All Along. Now, this is a show that I had an up and down relationship with. Like, when they announced this show like 3 years ago after WandaVision ended, I was very much excited for it because of the momentum from WandaVision, but also Catherine Hahn, big fan of hers. I like the Agatha character, but as time kind of went by and the MCU kind of went down and declining in like good storytelling, I kind of lost a little bit of faith in the show. And then the trailer came out, I'm like, what is this? But then premiere comes, wasn't the biggest fan of the first few episodes, but then when you go and look back at the series and understand why the show is kind of goofy in its telling, but I just love how the show found its way. I love how it kind of plays homage to all the witchy movies and shows that I've grown up with, like Hocus Pocus and whatnot, but then also shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, I love that the show had a personality. It wasn't just bland. I won't throw out any names for some Disney Plus shows that hasn't really worked for me, but it had a personality. It had great characters. Like, Agatha is such a fascinating character, played beautifully by Catherine Hahn. I like Joe Locke and the chemistry that she had with the boy and the reveal that we all kind of knew who he was going to end up being, but I like their chemistry. Patti LuPone was fantastic, especially, I believe it was episode 7 or 8 of the series with the whole like memento and how her mind worked. Fantastic episode, not of just Marvel and like comic book shows, but like one of the best episodes of TV this year. I'm a sucker for Aubrey Plaza, and I love who her character was and how like the back and forth relationship between Agatha and who Rio was just fantastic. Again, it started off rough for me, but once you kind of understand, oh, this is why it was kind of silly and goofy because of the perspective and what was going on with spells and all that stuff. So Agatha was a show that at the end of the day, It had a personality. It was having fun with itself, but then when it needed to be serious, it knew when to be serious. And I had a fun time with Agatha all along, and that's why I made my list. All right, before we get into my top 5, I want to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. If you are enjoying yourself so far, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up, consider sharing this video, but also if you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. With all that being said, let's get into my top 5. And coming in at my number 5 is the FX on Hulu series by the name of The Bear, and we're talking about season 3. I am such a big fan of The Bear. Like, I love the writing. I love these characters. I love, number one, I'm from Chicago, so I'm kind of, have a soft spot in my heart. I love the energy and the vibe and the storytelling and the character developments. Like, I love these characters, even though they get on my last nerve at times, but I love the high pressure of working in the kitchen, building a business. We've come so far with, seeing Carmi come into kind of opening himself up with Sydney and kind of being more vulnerable, right? And just that's what the season was about. I will say this, out of the 3 seasons of The Bear, this is probably my least favorite season, but the weakest season of The Bear is probably better than 90% of the stuff on TV operating on the high level. So this was a season that did kind of shift the focus on a little bit more what's going on with Carm, what's going on with him thinking about his ex-girlfriend, all the damn time. Sydney, she's kind of left with maybe doing her own thing and just a tug and pull there. But I love how we kind of go back and focus on the supporting characters. One of my favorite episodes of TV this year was Tina's episode with her coming across the bear and her meeting John Berthal and just like that struggle and that relatability. And that's the biggest thing about this show is these characters feel real. They feel authentic. You can relate to their struggle. You can relate to their, accomplishing their goals, but having their low moments. Like, I love this show. I feel like this is a season that is really setting up a 4th season that's going to have some great payoffs. So, and sometimes that could be a tug and pull. You have a season that's trying to set up a good payoff for the next season, but there's still good things to be had in this latest season of The Bear. It's so damn good. It is one of the best shows on TV, and that's why The Bear is on my list. Coming in next on my list is the Apple TV Plus drama murder mystery by the name of Presumed Innocent. Look, if you know me, this show had all the ingredients that I love about TV shows. That is a good, intriguing story, a good murder mystery, a drama-filled family, and some great performances across the board. We have a great ensemble cast that really brought their A-game each and every week, led by the great Jake Gyllenhaal. If you know Jake's work, he never disappoints. He plays Rusty, the attorney in the show who has had an affair with this woman who ends up becoming killed and murdered, and he is the prime suspect, but he's trying to figure out how he was blamed. He didn't do it, so he says, and that's the beauty of the show, because you're like, Rusty, as the show goes on, you're like, he's not that good of a guy as far as some of the decisions he makes. He has a pretty crazy big attitude, and it just is a great show, man. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed this each and every week. It's based on a movie, if you guys have seen the movie. Really good movie, by the way, starring Harrison Ford, but this show takes its own liberties in how they reveal if Rusty did it or not, and it was just fantastic to watch each and every week. And they announced a season 2, and it's not going to be the same characters. It's going to be like an anthology series, at least from what I understand, from what I read from the press release. But this was my jam, man. Like, I really enjoyed this show, and that ending was something that I had predicted, but seeing it all play out and how things kind of wrapped up was very satisfying for me. So if you haven't seen Presumed Innocence on Apple TV Plus, I know Apple doesn't really promote their shows, which is crazy to me, but if you're looking for a good murder mystery and a good drama, this is the show to watch. Next on my list at number 3 is one of the craziest shows I've seen all year, and that is Netflix's Baby Reindeer. Now, the show came with a little bit of controversy because after the show released, there was some issues with if it was real or not, but putting that aside, just looking at it for what it is, this was excellent, man. Like, this is a show that's all about, like, when you allow people to cross your boundaries, but also the whole idea of playing a victim and how some people kind of use that and weaponize it. This is just a fascinating show about addiction, about wanting to be accepted, about, again, crossing boundaries and not speaking up for yourself. It is just such a fascinating show that has some good comedy, good levity, great performances, but it's also extremely dark. Like, there's a particular episode involving like sexual abuse and sexual assault that was just heartbreaking. These are just characters that are very gray. And what I mean by that is there's no black and white in the show. Like, this is a show that plays within the gray. There's characters that you can understand why they're despicable, why they're terrible human beings, but you can understand why they're doing the things that they're doing and why people are allowing them to do the things they're doing. It's such a fascinating character study. And again, if it's real, if it's not, that's up for debate. If you look into the story of how the creator of the show, who also started the show, said how things happened and how the real person who plays Martha came out and said that it wasn't true. Nonetheless, this was a fascinating show that was, again, very funny at times, but also very serious, very heartbreaking. And this is just really well written television. Great miniseries, my favorite miniseries of the year, and it is one hell of a ride.
I have a sneaky feeling you might be the death of me.
But speaking one hell of a ride, going back to the time machine, coming in at number 2 is X-Men 97 on Disney+. This is a show that was near and dear to my heart because growing up as a kid, it was Power Rangers, it was Batman, the animated series, it was Spider-Man, and it was X-Men. And I will be honest with you all, I didn't have faith in Disney, especially Disney+, with them revising this show. And man, was I wrong, because this kind of took all the things I loved about the original X-Men 97 characters and the stories and how they lay out like what the X-Men mean to the Marvel universe and how they're looked upon. And it's just, it did so many things right. It brought Cyclops back to the forefront as a leader. It had Storm being a badass. It had the bond between Magneto and Professor X. It had the love triangle between Cyclops and Jean Grey and Wolverine. And it just had so many great moments. Rest in peace, even though I have a feeling we'll be seeing him again, but rest in peace to Gambit. Remember Me will never be forgotten. And just Genosha episode, it's just so many great moments. This is what makes X-Men so great, because it is a soap opera with superpowers, and I loved every single episode. I am very nervous about season 2, but we're going to not look into the future. We're going to focus on the present and just appreciate the greatness that X-Men 97 was, and that's why it was number 2 on my list.
To me, my X-Men.
But sticking in the world of superheroes, coming in at number 1 is HBO's The Penguin. This was a show that I did not know I needed because, listen, Colin Farrell was great in The Batman, but when they announced that he was having his own spinoff show, I'm like, is that really necessary? But man, was I wrong, because Lauren LaFrock, who is the show writer and the showrunner of the show, brought in, produced by Matt Reeves. It takes all the things I loved about The Batman, which is just playing within that grimy, disgusting, dirty world of Gotham, and then giving us like this really crazy amalgamation of Sopranos meets Breaking Bad meets a little bit of The Wire, and it takes you on this journey with Oz, who's despicable, right? There's no redeeming Oz, especially when things happen at the finale, which I'll never forgive him for, and I can't wait for Batman to give him those hands. But nonetheless, we go on the story through Oz, seeing his upbringing and the reveals of what comes with that, but also, him and Victor, who is just such a fascinating character, and I'll just leave it at that for those that haven't seen the show, but Victor's a great supporting character. But the thing that was the icing on the cake for me, Christine Milian is someone I've been a fan of for a very long time. She's such a great actress. She plays in a lot of like supporting roles, and every now and then she has a moment to kind of be in the forefront, but mostly she's kind of supporting other characters. But Sophia Falcone, or should I say Sophia Gigante, one of my favorite characters of any medium this year. I'm talking about movie, shows. I love Sophia's character. I love her story. I love the backstory. I think it was episode 4 of her going to Arkham and the Hangman reveal. My goodness, top to bottom, best performances of the year come from the show. Some of the best writing I've seen come from this show. And it's just and I'm not trying to make this a Marvel versus DC conversation, but one of the things about the Marvel shows, even with like an Agatha all along, which was on my list as you guys saw, the shows from Marvel hasn't really elevated the movies and vice versa. But the thing I love about The Penguin is I love The Batman. It's one of my favorite. It's probably, depending on the day, it's probably my favorite Batman film to date. Yes, you heard it here, but The Dark Knight can debate with that. Either way, I love The Batman 2022. But the thing that the Penguin did is it made that film that I already love even better. And then you look at the Batman and it can make the Penguin even better. So it complements each other. And that's what I love about this show. This is what I love about the world, which on a side tangent, the whole is Robert Pattinson going to be in the DCU? Are we not going to get Matt Reeves' continuation? Are we going to have to wait 20 years for Batman Part 2? Another conversation for another day. But nonetheless, I love this world. I love these characters. And I thought they did a hell of a job of just, again, continuing the Batman, adding on to the world, adding on to these characters, which again, once we finally get the Batman 2, it's going to enhance the experience if you went on this journey, which I did and probably you did too. And it was a journey that I can't even imagine how great it was going to turn out to be. So I love the Penguin, and that's why it's #1 on my list for the best shows of 2024.
You promised me, Oswald.
I know.
I deserve a better life.
I'm working.
So there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite shows of 2024. Pretty good year, and I know there's some shows I missed. I still got to watch Shogun, and there's Shrinking Season 2, which I got to catch up on, and I haven't even seen Squid Games at this point. So there were some things I missed, but I feel pretty confident in my list. So now it is your turn to once again share your list in the comments below. What was your favorite episode of TV this year? Like I mentioned, I love the Penguin Sophia's episode. I love the episode that we got with the reindeers, and also Genosha's episode and X-Men. Let me know some of your favorite episodes of TV. Who were some of your favorite characters? And what was your favorite new show of the year? What was your favorite return of a show of the year? Let's talk about it in the comments below. So with all that being said, it's that time of the year where we get all the lists. So I already have my top 10 movies of the year list on the channel that you all can check out. And coming pretty soon, most anticipated movies of 2025, most anticipated shows of 2025, and I also have some other smaller videos that are favorite horror films of 2024, underrated films of 2024. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification. That way you can check out all those videos. Thank you all for watching this video. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.